Welcome to Take Up Your Space, the podcast where healing meets identity and where your story of trauma doesn't get the final word. I'm Tammy Bruni, and my passion is to help you find freedom on every level: psychological, spiritual, physiological, emotionally. Too many of us shrink back under the weight of stress, pain, and past experiences. But you were created to take up space, to walk boldly in your kingdom identity, and live fully in the purpose God designed for you. Each week we'll explore practical tools, biblical truths, and the science of healing so you can step out of survival and into wholeness. This is a safe space for your nervous system, your spirit, and your story to be seen and restored. If this resonates with you, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with a friend who needs encouragement, and visit lionsarise.org for resources, my trauma healing manual, online programs, and more ways to connect. Together, let's take up space. We were always meant to do this. Welcome to Take Up Your Space. This is our last episode in our series on the nervous system. And so today we're going to be focusing on a very practical aspect of training your nervous system to live in peace. So last week we kind of ended on that note, on how peace is something that needs to come from the inside. So if you've been following along, you know that we've covered how our bodies sometimes say yes when our spirit wants to say no. We've looked at why we react before we think. We look at why we feel responsible for everyone's emotions, why conflict feels unsafe, and how our comfort habits can help us, but also put us in bondage. So today we're just going to bring it all together. And so the goal is to help you intentionally train your nervous system so that you can live in a place of calm, with clarity and alignment with God's Spirit, even when life feels unpredictable and scary. So I just want to start with a story, right? Imagine this: you're in a meeting and someone criticizes your work. Normally your chest will tighten, maybe your jaw clenches and your mind starts to race, and you feel that old surge of fight or freeze, and maybe you even want to just defend yourself immediately. But today you pause. You notice the sensation in your chest. You take 3 long breaths and you remind yourself, this is feedback, not danger. Remember, we said that sometimes it's information that we need. So you respond calmly, clearly, and truthfully. That moment, that's nervous system training in action. Where you've put the work in to train your nervous system, and now it responds calmly. So in everyday life, right, we have countless opportunities like this, moments where our nervous systems want to react automatically. But we need to remember what we practice today will become our default tomorrow, right? So let's be intentional about these practices. So many people think that, peace is something that we either have or don't have. But neuroscience tells us something different, that peace is a skill, a learned ability of the nervous system. Your body and brain can be trained to respond differently to stress, to fear, and uncertainty. Think of your nervous system like a garden. If you leave it untended, right, then weeds are going to grow. So old trauma patterns, your habitual overreactions, your anxious thought loops, all of that's just going to stay there. But if you cultivate it, how do we do that? With awareness, with regulation, and with responding versus reacting, then peace naturally grows there or blooms there like flowers in your garden, right? And the Word of God supports this. This is one of my favorite scriptures. Isaiah 26 verse 3 says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. The mind, body, and spirit work together. So trusting God is part of training the nervous system. So the first pillar of this is awareness. So awareness is simply noticing what's happening in your body, your mind, and your spirit before it escalates. So many of our reactions come from old survival patterns, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses that we developed as children or in our past trauma. When you notice the pattern, you interrupt it, right? So what are some practical ways to cultivate awareness? A body scan, right? This is one of my favorite things to give clients to do as well, is to close your eyes. Notice tension points in your body. You start from the top of your head or from your feet, and you scan all the way up, noticing every part of your body and where tension is sitting in your body, right? Your shoulders, your jaw, your chest, your stomach, like you can just scan that through, right? And then pick up where it is. Then there's the emotional check. Label what you're feeling: fear, anger, frustration, overwhelm, right? Put a word to it, right? Because then it's not a mystery anymore. And then the thought reflection. What's the first thought that arises when you are triggered? Is it true or is it an old pattern? I always say you've got to have this court case with your thoughts, because sometimes it's your opinion, but it's not a fact, right? It's based on these past experiences. So, for example, maybe every time someone disagrees with you, your stomach knots, right? Awareness allows you to pause instead of reacting automatically. So this is also a spiritual practice where we bring our inner experiences to God in prayer and then noticing His presence in that moment. So the next step is regulation. So we move to helping the nervous system return to calm and safety. This is where many people struggle, because they try to force themselves to stay calm, but then they don't have any tools to do that. So that's why it's important to just take these things. Another thing I like to say is they're tools in your tool belt. Put them in there and you can whip them out when you need them, right? So some regulation techniques include the breathing, right? It's the slow, deep inhales and then the longer exhales. You know, even just for 1 or 2 minutes can reset your nervous system, right? Then it's the grounding. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice objects around you. Engage your senses. So it can be see, smell, taste, touch, whatever it may be, that brings you back to the present, because all of this is about coming back to the present. Movement, stretching, walking, gently shaking your body, just shake out the tension. And then movement tells your body it's safe. Because remember, when we freeze, it's almost like we're dead, right? But as long as what we can move, we're safe. So if we look at when we look at how trauma neural networks form, they very often form when there's been a freeze response, because we freeze into that trauma response. We freeze that emotion. When we can fight or flight, that indicates movement. And so very often when we've been able to do that, that trauma neural network might not lock in as deeply as when we freeze and we have the sense that I can't get away, right? At least movement says I can get away. Creative expression, right? Journaling, drawing, listening to music, all of this releases stored energy, right? So let me just give you an example, right? One client would eat snacks compulsively whenever she felt anxious at work. Right? So she was unconsciously trying to regulate her nervous system. So when we practiced noticing the sensation in her body when she felt like that, and then replacing it with grounding and the breath exercises, that compulsive habit slowly but surely lost its grip. So her nervous system was learning new ways to find calm, and maybe that's your situation at home where you want to snack or you want to do things constantly because you think it's going to make you feel better. So with awareness and regulation rights in place, the next step is response. So responding from a regulated state means that your actions are aligned with your values and your spirit rather than these reactive patterns. So again, Romans 12 verse 2 reminds us, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So your nervous system can't fully transform until your spirit guides your responses. So these small decisions matter, responding calmly in conversation, setting boundaries, or speaking the truth in love. So practice choosing one area each day where you notice a reactive pattern and then intentionally respond differently. The final piece of this is spiritual anchoring. Right now, what is an anchor? An anchor is something that keeps you still. So think of a boat's anchor, it keeps that boat in place. And we all need something to anchor to. So peace isn't only about these nervous system exercises that we're doing. It's about connecting with God's presence and His truth, right? So the word, we can anchor our nervous system to the word, right? Psalm 46 verse 10, be still and know that I'm God. Isaiah 26 3, perfect peace comes from trusting Him. 1 Corinthians 6:12, choose freedom over habits that enslave. And Psalm 34 verse 14, seek peace and pursue it. Right? So there are these things that we can do, like even just finding scriptures to meditate on, or having a scripture in your belt that you can pull out when you're feeling dysregulated. So these daily practices of prayer and worship and reading the word and gratitude so important as well, literally calms your nervous system and then helps you to live in alignment with God's Spirit, right? Because He also says, don't be anxious for anything, right? But bring everything to Him in prayer. So here's a simple daily routine to train your nervous system for peace. So first of all, do a morning check-in. Rate your stress. What does it feel like from 1 to 10? Then take a few moments of intentional breath, right? It's the inhale and then the long exhale, right? Throughout the day, there are these pause moments that you can take, right? Where if you feel like you're going to react, then just pause. Even if you just take 2 or 3 slow breaths, it makes a huge difference, right? And then there's the evening reflection, right? Sit with your journal these moments where you were able to stay regulated, where you reacted, and then what can you do better tomorrow, right? Isn't it so awesome that God says that His mercies on you every morning, right? It gives us abundant grace. So every day we can draw on that to do better the next day. Because this is what's going to happen when we're practicing, right? We're not failing, right? We're learning all the time and we're growing. And then the positive activation is engaging in joy every day. Find something to be joyful about. Creativity, create something, draw, whatever that may be for you. Give expression to these things. Gratitude is so important to our nervous system, and it's also healing to the body. So instead of always seeing what's wrong and what's not there, have gratitude for what you do have. And then spend time in nature as well. I mean, for me, the most calming thing is to just go and sit by the sea and hear the waves or walk on the beach. Like, to be in nature is there's just something extraordinary with it as we connect with our creator also in nature. So that consistency matters. Every day of our life is like a training session where we can learn, right? Where we can learn and practice, right? And so over time, our nervous system actually starts to respond rather in a calm way than when we're stressed. So as we conclude this series, just remember that peace is learned. It's not automatic. And now you've got some tools to notice your triggers, to regulate your nervous system, to respond with intention, and to anchor in God's Spirit. Right? Psalm 34:14 reminds us, turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. Training your nervous system is part of pursuing peace. So be patient with yourself, celebrate small wins, and trust in God's guidance. So thank you for joining me on this journey as we've walked through these 6 episodes. I pray that you'll walk forward with awareness, with regulation, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. So until the next time, stay mindful, stay anchored, and take up your space in peace. This episode of Take Up Your Space is brought to you by the Take Up Your Space healing programs. If you're ready to go deeper, my self-help manual has been developed into a full course to guide you step by step through healing on a psychological, spiritual, and physiological level. And if you feel called to help others, I also offer a coaching pathway and facilitator training so you can bring this message of freedom into your community. You can learn more and find the right program for you at lionsarise.org. Remember, you were created to take up your space.